I'll start. I'm Nithya, and I was director of Rang De Raga last year, and I am also director next year.
Hi everyone, I'm Sahana. I go to UC Davis. I'm going to be an incoming senior. I was director of Dhwani last year, and I was also just involved in the comp board that hosted Dhwani for the last 3 years, and I'll still be involved next year as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Om. I founded Boston Bandish last year and will be running it again this year.
Good. Thanks, guys. But yeah, these are our panelists, and we'll just get started with our questions. But yeah, our first kind of question is, what production detail is most likely to cause issues on competition day?
I can go ahead and answer that. On our side, I think something that caused most of the issues on competition day that we saw were like lights, sound, mics. I think it causes the most issues because it's the most variable. Even though we did have like a sound manager and a lights person on the theater staff, we still had to deal with a lot of day of issues and changes with sounds as teams will very justifiably have their opinions on like what sounds best and what they feel needs to be changed like with sound and with lights, and we have to try our best to adjust and help them out. And honestly, I think this is always going to be something that just causes some kind of issue just because it is so variable in the grand scheme of things. But I think the best thing that you can do as a director being part of a comp board to prevent these issues from snowballing is just having experienced and knowledgeable people on your staff, having people that have not only been vetted in terms of like sound and lights, but also just like have experienced what a comp looks like in the last 2 years has really helped with us preventing any small issues, say, of turning into something bigger.
To echo the last point about having people who know what a comp's supposed to look like, no one on my board had ever been to a comp, and so we were kind of figuring things out on the fly. And so one thing that we realized pretty close to the comp starting was we need to have all the team videos and the competition intro video uh, projectable on like the projector board. And so I was up there in the booth like 30 minutes before putting together a PowerPoint, and I feel like it was very interesting to see like a projector is kind of thought it was like an automatic thing, but it ended up being such a kind of last minute thing that we had to throw together to get it to work.
For us, we definitely had issues with sound, for comp day. The week of comp, we were scrambling to figure out, our sound, our mic sheets, our mic maps. Our sound engineer had a lot of adjustments that they wanted made. So, last minute, that last week was definitely very hectic regarding sound.
Awesome. Thank you all for your input on that. Just to kind of go into the venue directly, what should directors know about working with venue staff and production teams?
Um, I think that regarding production team, and venue staff, I think it's really important to remember that you're working with them, and they're not just working for you. You're a team and you're collaborating to make the competition happen. Venue staff, should always be aware of what's kind of going on regarding sound, lighting, as a lot of times the venue itself has their own like sound people, like AV techs. So it's really important to always communicate with them and kind of make sure that you guys are always on the same page, and there's no like disconnect regarding what they know and what you know.
I definitely agree with that. I think the main thing I would say is just develop a strong relationship with the staff that you're working with. They're going to be the people that you depend on most, and especially they have the knowledge that you and your comp team probably does not have. So establish a good relationship early on, consistently communicate any info. I found it helpful to have like at least 3 to 4 meetings with the team in the weeks leading up to the competition and just staying consistent, responding to emails. I also had like the main like theater managers like phone number on hand just in case I needed to contact her outside of email. And then also just what Nithya said, just being like empathetic and remembering that, you are working with them and like just having a lot of understanding for any like day of changes that might occur and just sort of supporting them throughout their work is super important.
For sure. And I think like for sound and lights, uh, I guess lights can vary. For sound, hopefully you're hiring a very reputable production company that has done a lot of a cappella shows. So they have their way. They're probably very familiar with how to set up an auditorium, how to do the sound checks and get everyone through. And so knowing when to defer to them and when to take the lead, kind of making sure everything's consistent with ASA, but also not you're not overwhelming them because you are kind of working with them and they're the ones who are orchestrating the show. For lights, our lighting team is like a student group on campus, and so they have considerably less experience producing. And so I also found taking a very long call with them to explain, here's what a show is supposed to look like, was a very important part of the pre-show process. As for venue, I guess some comps do it out of their campus and some do it on campus. Knowing the facilities manager is always very useful if you need to go into the venue early or you left something behind. There's always things that are left behind, and maybe it's important to know where you can find lost and found as well.
Awesome. Yeah. It's kind of sticking with the venue question. Like, what are some of the first things you guys do when you arrive at the venue?
I think one of the most important things to do when you get to venue is to check in with whoever the venue manager is, and as well as your sound engineer, and if you do have a lighting tech, your lighting tech. I think it's super important to the minute you get there to touch base with everybody, see where everybody's at. And if you have like your tech board members at venue, also checking in with them, seeing how they're feeling, kind of getting a feel for how everybody is doing regarding like their jobs and how efficiently we're getting things done.
Yeah, I think as a team, even before obviously like day of the show, we have very like comprehensive task lists that like break down the schedule of the day almost by like every like 20 to 30 minutes. So I think walking in, just making sure that everyone knows like what they're going to do because almost everyone on the board has like a task as soon as they enter the venue. One thing I found really helpful was like there are a lot of board members who had never been to the venue before. So just giving everyone like a tour of the venue if you've been there already and like just like pointing out the things that they might have to be doing throughout the day was super helpful. So just like making sure that everyone's like familiar with the space and like knows where to go so that that doesn't raise any concerns like throughout the day later on.
Yeah, I also think it's important to have like a staging space or like a operations center where you can store your equipment or your backpacks or laptops. Um, that can also be your home base if you're temporarily out of gas and need to recharge for a bit. Uh, Also, yeah, I guess if people have not been to the venue before, the walkthrough was quite important. You should kind of know every hallway, every restroom. If people have accessibility needs, you should know where the elevators are and how to move things and people uh, up flights of stairs.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, move on to the next question. I guess, like, what kind of responsibilities should never remain on the comp director's plate on show day, and what kind of tasks should be delegated?
I got this one. So, uh, kind of speaking from experience, uh, most things you as the comp director want to put someone responsible and autonomous in charge. Uh, in the producing of large events, it's kind of a common refrain that you spend most of your time dealing with exceptions that pop up. So, like, I had to deal with a student who needed to take a proctored exam from another team. So I had to go spend like a bit of time looking for a staff member who could supervise that. So that's the sort of thing you're gonna get distracted with. You should have someone who's responsible on top of everything that's important for the show itself. So one of those is like having a very, very reliable head liaison. Um, you can think of that person as like the coordinator of logistics and people moving. That person should be in charge of moving every person who's competing from place to place and coordinating it and like delegating it down to the team liaisons. Because if your teams are kind of flowing in the right place, that's kind of 90% of the battle of dealing with people who are traveling to a new campus. The other thing is probably tech. Again, hopefully you're a sound engineer, someone with a lot of experience, but it's nice to have someone who can supervise or provide status updates. Um, and again, the projector, like the questions about what should you not be working on show day. You should not be running up and down the stairs to the projector booth because you're the only person who knows how to make this thing run.
And kind of to add on to that, just like said, I think it's super, super important that you have really reliable head liaisons. They should be your rocks. They should be involved with everything the teams are doing. You should never be the one to be contacting teams and contacting captains to get people to where they should be. That should be the head liaison's job to delegate to the liaisons, and make sure it's getting done. You don't want to be sitting there, kind of confused on where teams are, or trying to figure out or get in contact with team captains, as you'll definitely have other tasks to do regarding the venue itself. So, it's super important for you to have really good head liaisons to keep logistics running.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Ohm and Ithya. I think I sort of walked in with like pretty much nothing assigned to me the entire day. Like every other person on the comp board had like tasks assigned and like there was a breakdown. But I think I was just very lucky to have a very like experienced and capable team who could like handle the main tasks during the day so that I could handle the exceptions. And I think the way to really think about it is like you out of your comp board are the most knowledgeable person about the show. Like you're going to know every single detail, but that doesn't mean you're handling every single detail. So you just need to be prepared to like advise on like random things that might pop up or like random issues, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're going to be handling everything on your own, and it should not be that way either.
Then, guys, that does take us into our next question, which is what are kind of like the most common day of show issues that arise?
I feel like the most common day of show issue is definitely timing. I feel like for a lot of people, I think that people to getting to the venue on time, like teams arriving to venue on time for tech time, or just in general, setup kind of takes a long time. So um I think the biggest thing that people run into for problems day of show wise is definitely timing.
I think one thing we have consistently struggled with or had trouble with like every year that we've done Dhwani is just sort of coordinating that transition between teams like while the show is going on. Especially like with our venue, we have a pretty small venue. There are like some like restrictions, like only three teams can like stay in the back room. So then you have to figure out what to do with like the other two teams that are just like sort of stragglers like in the venue. And I think also just like ensuring that the audience itself isn't being disturbed by teams coming in and out. So I think it's a process that we don't really think about until like night before of like how are we transitioning smoothly between these teams. But I highly encourage as a comp board for you to like think about all of those like smaller details because it'll make the day a lot better for both you, for the board, for teams, and for the audience that's like watching the show.
Yeah, so you're always planning for like worst case situations of what if someone's late? What if something's running behind? So you kind of want to fill your show, like the show itself, with things that will also accommodate those kinds of delays. So I guess like intermission is a very obvious one, and people get bored and maybe antsy. So what we did is we had samosas for free, samosas and chai for audience members, and that kind of let them recharge and be excited for the second half. And then after the show, judging took a long time, and so uh, we had budgeted for two exhibition acts and a little bit of talking, and then a beatboxer battle. And so on the same previous few questions topic of trust and delegation, luckily my MCs just had off the cuff were able to think of a dance battle between the various teams, and that ended up being very useful. But I think having these sorts of contingencies is very important because you can always scrap those and save them for next year, but it's stressful if you're sitting there at a full house and you're like, okay, the judges still need another 15 minutes. Let's just stare awkwardly. And you want the audience to not be bored and you want to do something that will respect their time. So having things that are kind of there for everyone's benefit are nice to have.
Yeah. Just kind of touching on like comps getting delayed or become disorganized. Like for you guys, like from your experience, what causes comps to get delayed or become disorganized?
I think the biggest thing that can cause comps to become delayed or disorganized can be not putting enough buffer room between every single tech time, every single activity you have, especially on show day. I think that a lot of times schedules can get super condensed, and I think it's super important to leave that 20-30 minute buffer time in between to make sure that teams can get to the venue on time and there's kind of room for them to be like 5-ish minutes late. Obviously we don't want that to happen. We always want to be on time. I think a big saying for our comp board is definitely if you're on time, you're late. So, getting those teams ready and making sure they're ready, getting their liaisons to get them out of the hotel, get them to the lobby, get them on their way to venue, on time, which is in our case early, is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things that I was thinking about was just like logistics of teams coming to venue. Like that's always, I feel like, going to be an issue, especially because there's so many people that are coordinating like rides and, who has to go pick them up, who's like, which of the team members are coming, which of them are staying at the hotel. Like there's so many of those logistics that you also just can't control. So like that's definitely something that has made it disorganized. I think another big thing is judging time. Like I think for every comp, like they can relate to like judges taking longer than maybe you've told them to take. And it really just like varies depending on like what judges you get. I would say just like emphasize throughout the day, like as soon as you meet them, like you only have like this much time for judging. Have someone on your comp board in the room, basically just like as a timekeeper, reminding them of like the time that they have left to judge. And then also just like don't be afraid to be like straight up with them and like be like, we have a show to run and like we only have this much time left and like you guys might need to hurry up. And I think it's just something that can really be a stressful thing just because like what Ohm said, like you have to figure out on the spot like how to keep a whole audience of people entertained. So the best way to just make sure that doesn't happen is just being super straightforward with judges and like emphasizing to them how much time they actually have.
One other thing that is relevant is that you're it's kind of a long week. It's Monday to Thursday. Everyone's working and has practices, and then everyone's flying out on Friday, and your board is doing all this work. And so everyone's tired. And so your role as comp director is to kind of run the comp, but it's ultimately also to like take care of your people and make sure that that's accounted for. You're ultimately like it's more of a people management task than it is an a cappella task. And so from that standpoint, like people are tired, they have adrenaline, but you want to kind of be accommodating and your board is going to have a lot of tasks on their plate. And so for the sake of not getting delayed, you want to just not put too much on their plate and kind of spread tasks out, front load things where it's reasonable to do so. And also for the team's sake, yeah, give them like enough buffer time. Don't be rushing them out. Don't be like dragging them as fast as they can to places. Give them as well kind of a scaffolding because they're going to be in the midst of their competition prep. Make things as easy as possible for them, and everything else will follow from that.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Just moving on to like kind of a hospitality-based question. What makes teams feel supported and well cared for throughout the competition weekend?
Yeah, so I guess sort of related to the last question, I think this really does trickle down from your mindset as a comp director about why you're running the show. Ultimately, the show is, I mean, you're doing this as a thing with your friends at your school, but it's ultimately an opportunity for these teams to showcase their art for a audience on a stage with really good lights and sound. And your role as the director is to facilitate that and make that happen as best as possible. So if your focus is on delivering that experience, teams will really notice that. They'll notice that your board is attentive to their needs. They'll notice that you've put a lot of effort into it. Like I think most of the comments, the positive comments after a comp will be about, wow, they were so nice to us, and wow, the sound and the lights were so good. And if teams feel like they're not being taken for granted and they're being respected as performers, I think the actual practicalities of an hour long delay on stage or any of those things don't actually matter because they're going to go talk about how the sound was fantastic, and that's going to be the lasting memory from that experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just important to be like understanding and empathetic. And I think as a comp board, like I've completely understood like we feel like we put in like so much of our time and like so many months into this like comp, but at the same time, just remembering these teams have also put in so many months and so much effort into, performing. And I think it goes both ways and just being understanding of the fact that both of you guys are going to be stressed and both of you guys are going to want this to go well. And I think just making sure like your tone is like, just understanding like every time you're talking to them, they might bring up like a lot of requests or, changes, and you just have to be, and I'm not saying just like bend to like every ask that they, give, but it's just more about like understanding how to communicate your needs and still like meet their requests as well as best as you can. I think another thing we really put thought into is like food day of. I we provided lunch on Saturday and dinner, and I think especially for lunch we made sure like we provided like South Indian food because like we wanted something that wasn't super oily or something that wouldn't affect their voices like day of. And we also checked in with them about this like when we were like thinking about food. So I think just making sure that some of the things that you're providing to them are not are supporting them as best as you can. And then I think another thing that worked well was just like checking in with teams. It doesn't have to be you as a comp director, but just having maybe your head liaison or having maybe liaisons check in with their teams and then communicate what teams are feeling to you. And not just like checking in, but if someone is raising an issue, just making sure you're taking time to like address that issue as well so that teams don't feel like they're not being heard.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's super important to be attentive to the team's needs and kind of listen to them. I think that obviously as comp board, we're always so like go, 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 go comp weekend, but these teams also are in that mindset and they also are going through the same kind of stress that we are going through. They just traveled like they just took like a 12-hour like traveling day or something like to get to competition. Like they're tired. They probably didn't sleep well. They're probably like they've probably been practicing for hours. They're tired too. And it's really important, I agree, like to make sure that they're well fed, to make sure that if they have any issues, like they're able to communicate that to their liaisons and getting your liaisons to check in on them. I think that's a super important point. I think a lot of times, obviously, when we're thinking of logistics, we put aside people's feelings, and I think it's really important to consider the feelings of the teams while also trying to keep on track logistically.
Just to add to this with maybe a sort of concrete example, uh, being nice to teams should be the priority, but it doesn't mean you have to like bend backwards to accommodate every single thing. So one of the teams texted me saying they have a mouse in their practice room. And I'd explain to them that in a city that's as old as Boston, there's just going to be like mice. And I chatted with them, and many of them like reposted pictures of the mouse on Instagram, and it was like something that was a little bit scary for them because I don't know if they'd ever seen a mouse. And it became fine because I think I treated them with a good amount of like attention and care, even if I couldn't find another space for them to go.
Yeah, I have an example too, I guess. One team had asked Friday night, this was like post like captain's meeting, they had come up to me and they were like, "Oh, I think our lighting cues are completely wrong." And like our lighting person on our staff had already like studied all the lighting cues, pre-programmed some of them. And at that moment, like my instinct was just to be like, okay, like we can't do anything. Like, you know, you're asked to like submit a lighting cue. If it's wrong, like that's not on us. And like there's nothing that we can do. But I think one thing I thought about is like, okay, let me just call the lighting person and ask, maybe is this something that they can fix? And like I called them and they were on call with the team for like 30 minutes. And this was like 9 p.m. on a Friday night. And like they figured it out. And it ended up being like their lighting cues got to be changed, and they performed well. And I think it's just sort of like understanding like what you can do as a director. Like there's not a lot, but like if there is someone else that can help them out with it, like definitely ask. But also being straightforward with teams, and just being like, sometimes like it's going to be a no, sometimes it's going to be a yes. It's like not up to me, but it's up to like people that are way more experienced than I am.
I also have an example actually. So for our competition for food and hospitality, we got a text the week of show, saying that one of the members on one of the teams was practicing a religious holiday and he wasn't able to use electricity. And he also was not able to eat until after sundown. So for these for these restrictions, we made adjustments such as for tech time, we gave them he wasn't able to participate in tech time, but for his show, we were able to talk with the ASA board and kind of figure that out and troubleshoot that regarding show order. As many of you know, show order is supposed to be like a double blind. So we're not supposed to know what's going to happen, and the teams are not supposed to know what's going to happen. So obviously, logistically, that can be an issue. But we were able to talk to ASA, talk to the team, figure out what their needs were, and kind of figure that out. So it was definitely a little bit complicated to navigate, but at the same time, we were able to help this team member meet um, their needs for that weekend.
Yeah, thanks for those examples. It was super insightful. Just kind of moving on from that. What ideas sounded good on paper but didn't work as well in practice?
I can go first on this one. So, for lunch on Saturday, we had the idea that we should just tap teams into our campus dining halls because our freshmen have like hundreds of unused meal taps, and so we can get some free meals and people can eat in the dining halls and it'll be great. We didn't think about the fact that like the dining hall staff or like whoever's tapping the IDs is going to ask for like a list of all the teammates or that we need to have like the IDs and everything. So it ended up being a lot more work than we expected because we texted out, hey teams, if you want this, let us know by like the morning of Saturday. And then an hour later, we're scrambling to find the IDs, get the list of names, talk with facilities and all that. So I would say we're definitely going to offer this next year. We're just going to think a little bit harder about like making sure we have people's IDs in advance, getting the list of names submitted to dining halls, etc. So I think like a lot of bad ideas can be bad and some of them can be fixed with a little bit of advanced planning.
I this is, I mean, pretty specific, I think, but in terms of our lighting, one thing that the lighting person decided to like change this year was instead of having it fully like pre-programmed, she wanted to like program like during the show. I don't necessarily know what that means, but I assume that means like she's controlling it like while the show is going on. And like I think we ended up getting a couple of like significant complaints from teams about the lighting being incorrect or being off. And I think she was super understanding. Like she's a super nice person. I think she just wanted to do it because she like wanted to have fun with it. And like I think she just was having trouble with like understanding some of the cues that teams were like submitting. And she had mentioned like, okay, next year, like I'm just gonna have it strictly pre-programmed. So again, what Ohm said, like there are just some things that like happen and like you can't help it, especially we don't even control lighting. So we didn't know, but like I think it's something that always it's okay to try things out, and like if it doesn't work out then it's fine. It didn't significantly derail the competition. So
I think this is kind of like a little bit of a funny story. So our first year for comp, so that was 2 years ago now. We decided to do a little sweet treat on the Friday after our mixer, and we wanted to do ice cream, but we didn't consider the fact that obviously as singers, they don't want to be having cold things right before they go and practice after mixers. So that ended up being a little bit of a fail for our first year, but um we were able to combat that the next year with the feedback in mind.
Yeah, I was there for the ice cream. I do remember getting a lot of free ice cream, which was nice. But yeah, these are great examples of things that really do sound good in theory. So my next question for you guys, on a very similar line, is how do you determine what is worth spending money on and versus cutting your budget? Like, how do you assess what is feasible in your budget and what you can splurge on a little bit more versus things that absolutely should not be cutting the budget?
So I think the most important thing, obviously, for an a cappella competition would be sound. I don't think that you should try to cut your budget around sound. I think that you should focus on spending as much money as you can on your sound and making sure that you you are able to cut back on different costs. For example, last year we weren't sure how much money we would have for merch. If we were to spend that money for merch, we wouldn't know if we would have enough to pay for our sound engineer. So we cut back on merch and we were able to provide um, good sound for amazing sound quality for our teams, and we were also able to provide them with better meals. So I think that the two most important things you should be focusing on when it comes to teams is definitely sound and I guess also like their comfortability. So just how comfortable they are able to be throughout comp weekend. And one of those things is not having to worry about what they're gonna eat.
I think the most important thing is just like, I mean, it's like the way anyone would budget, even personally, just like differentiating between what a team needs and then what they might want. And like things that are like needs, obviously, are like good sound, food, hotel, venue. Like those are things that you want to spend most of your budget on, and you should be because that's what teams are coming here for. And then there are things like merch or decorations or like just like other maybe small like amenities that you're giving the teams that absolutely if you have the money to spend like go ahead and spend it. I think and I've experienced this as a comp board. Like sometimes we can get carried away with just like the fun things that we're doing for the teams. But I think at the end of the day, like when teams are walking away from the competition, like if the sound and if like hotel or if like those necessities aren't good, like they aren't going to be talking about some of the fun things that you provided them. They're just going to be talking about that. So just make sure that you have your like necessities in order and you're spending like your or you're paying for the best in those aspects. And then other aspects, if you have enough money, then go ahead and spend.
I think Nithya and Sahana covered the most important of those things. I think maybe my hot take is that like sound is the only important thing at a competition, or like the most important thing. Everything else is sort of secondary, maybe like a slight caveat that like lights are really nice for production value. Um, I think maybe some comps spend a lot of money on like board retreats and things of that nature. I guess it's up to you and your finance chair to look at your budget and see. But for the sake of longevity of your organization and the circuit, and to be able to produce more events like this, it's certainly worth not dipping too far into the coffers to spend on things like that. Um, I am still conflicted on how much money to spend on hospitality. I personally spent close to $0 on decorations or anything. Um, we did not do room reveals, which I guess was sort of unpopular among some people. Um, I think there's a lot of things if you look at one of these sample budgets for a competition where the numbers that are quoted can be like much larger or much smaller depending on what you want to optimize for. And like sound is like you should not compromise on sound no matter what. Um, and things like food are certainly important, but you can always like cater large amounts of food and accommodate or do things like dining halls for saving money. Um, what was the original? The original question is what's worth spending money on? Yeah, I think like long-term longevity of your competition is, in my opinion, the most important or among the more important things. So if you can like not waste $500 on like pizza for your board every week, and that allows you to continue paying for good sound every year and like recruiting for the next year's board, I think that's a good trade to make. But I don't know, maybe also I'm very practical minded in this and it's less fun that way.
No, I think all of you guys bring up excellent points. I think what I'm hearing from all of you guys is that for an a cappella competition, sound really is the most crucial aspect. Um, Also lighting, but in general, like venue, sound, lighting, these are things that we should be prioritizing along with what a team needs versus like food, for example, versus what would be really nice if they got it. So merch related stuff. So prioritizing your budget that way. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, also other things like water for the teams, honey for the teams, like those are the essentials that are absolutely critical. And like teams who are singing should not be left without water or honey. And so yeah, I guess knowing what is a need for a team, it can be things you haven't thought of. But teams do have lots of needs, and it's important to address all of those, and that's definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are like in a comp board and you have access to acapella teams, asking them what would be really essential for them when they're traveling for competitions or shows would honestly be a great piece of information for you guys. You can plan around that as well. Heading more on the team side of things, how do you guys handle teams that miss deadlines or fail to respond?
So I think that this is a great question. I think that a lot of times, teams will, end up forgetting about a deadline. I think it's super important to send out reminder emails. And if you do experience a team not responding, I think the easiest way is to, go to your registration packets and pull their captain's phone numbers and just shooting them a text. And if they continue to, forget to meet deadlines or miss deadlines, I think it's really important to also, at the same time, hold teams accountable. As a competition, we can't be sustainable if we are not receiving important things such as deposits or registration fees. So it's really important to also kind of not let yourself fall behind on that stuff too, because obviously registration fees do make up a huge amount of a lot of our budgets. So, missing out on a couple $100s from a team can be extremely detrimental to a competition. So, when it comes to things like security deposits, we have those so that if a team is to meet a deadline, we can do deduction, not meet a deadline, we can do deductions based on their communication and how much they've talked to us about their situation. Or if they have not communicated to us, making it clear that if they are unable to meet a deadline, they must talk to us and they must tell us what's going on because we cannot be in the dark when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, I think communication is 100% the most critical part. Uh, I think like the security deposits are $100 or something like that. So taking away $5 from a team, unclear whether that's actually a useful punitive measure. But I also agree with the just harass them by text. Like I was spamming these teams every deadline if they missed it, like every day. Like, where's your intro video? Where's your intro video? Where's your intro video? Like ultimately the punishment of taking the money is pointless. Like you just want the video, and if I need the content from the team, they just need to send it to me. Um, I agree with the point on the registration fees. I guess that is a great point because a lot of the money is needed for things before the show, like ordering food or ordering merch. We actually had a team that was sponsored by their department, and so they would only write the check, or they were only able to write the check after the competition. So I was chasing them down for like, I think I got the check on April 1st. It posted to my student account. So luckily they were responsive by text, and every time they'd like give me the number of the accounts person at their school or like have me join the calls. Um, but if they were not communicative, I would have been very frustrated. So encouraging, I guess also building a line of communication. I don't know how most big boards do it. My board was just me until the competition. So I was texting the teams directly. Maybe like establish a rapport with the teams so that you kind of know who to talk to or push on. That's very useful to have. It's an interpersonal, very much an interpersonal game.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. Like teams will miss deadlines. Like I had to beg for like tech ingest, like set lists, like lighting cues, like and I don't think they also understand that we also have deadlines from ASA. So like first, like when you're planning out like your schedule of deadlines, like make sure the deadline that you're giving the team is like at least 2 weeks before the deadline that ASA sets for you to submit, because you want to have that buffer time of like when they'll actually end up submitting things. I think a lot of teams like they were like either like quarter system teams like or like they weren't coming back from winter break and like they were like sending it like too late. Like there were so many of these different things. And I think one thing that I just like kept emphasizing to teams like more than just like taking away money, because I agree with them, like I don't know if it does much, is I think I was just like, if you don't submit your set list, like I can't give that to the theater staff and then your performance is like not going to be as great, like there is just that like immediate consequence of like if you don't tell us like what you're going to be performing or your sound or your like lighting, then like we just have no way of like ensuring that like your performance is as great as it should be, and is like matching the effort that you should. And I feel like when I communicated that to teams, people started sending things because I was like, I'm working with someone else, like you have to like abide by like some of these deadlines. So I would say, yeah, first of all, just be mindful about like when you're setting these deadlines so that you also as a comp board are not in trouble. And then two, just like emphasizing that if they don't submit some of these things, it's a derailment to like their performance at the end of the day.
I also just want to add on, like, I feel like a lot of times teams forget that we are not only managing just one team, we are managing 8 teams. So it's really important to kind of be on top of things. I think a lot of times, people will fall behind, like Sahana said. So I think it's just really important to keep that communication up and kind of let them know what the consequences of not submitting things are, such as they're not going to have the performance that they want because the sound engineer is going to be confused or the lighting tech is going to be confused. Like, it's really important to emphasize that what they don't do affects their performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the takeaway here is that communication is key. So don't be afraid to like spam your team captains or MDs or even straight up call them, because in the end, some of these deadlines are not as pertinent for comp board, but more pertinent for the team themselves and will impact their performance. So that understanding is really crucial to get across with urgency as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up questions for everyone else. You can either unmute and directly ask your question, or you can type it in the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. But I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions that might be there. Yes, Sneha, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say great job, panelists. I think you answered the questions really, really well. I was particularly struck by um, just the awareness that you're working with the production team and creating that relationship. And then you also spoke a lot about the relationships between your board members and teams. I do want to ask more about the relationships that you form with the audience members, and how do you make sure that they're having the best time of their life and that they want to keep coming back and bring people the next year.
So I think that there are a couple things that audience members really like. I think one thing, is an engaging script for your show. For when we sat down and wrote our script with our MCs, we made sure that these jokes were relatable or the script was relatable to the audience. It just, you definitely want to think about how to kind of lighten the mood. I mean, they're going to be sitting for all this time watching all these teams pass by. A lot of them come specifically for some family member or a close friend. So you want to make sure they're feeling entertained between each set and from the beginning of the show. Along with that, I think Ohm brought it up earlier too. During intermission, having snacks or some kind of way to kind of let these audience members refuel also is pretty important. Obviously, per your venue's guidelines, it's really important to try to incorporate some kind of snack or something to keep the audience members engaged. And then also when it comes to the end of your show, during that period where the judges are deliberating, it takes such a long time, and sometimes that itself can make people want to walk out. So I think it's really important to do engaging things such as have those exhibition acts, have those beatbox battles, have those like random dance battles. Um, I think it's important to create a fun atmosphere so that the audience feels entertained as well as well also the teams because they've been sitting here all day as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because honestly, like when I first started, planning this, like especially with my board, like I I just kept thinking about like the teams and like their performances. And I feel like it only hits you like a month before that you are putting on like a show for other people to watch as well. And like you have to keep them entertained. And I think like a few things, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it is at the end of the day a second priority because your first priority is the competition itself. And, having the audience entertained is just like a bonus point. And I think as a comp director, I didn't have necessarily the time to put into like ensuring that the show was as entertaining as possible. So the people that you're putting the show or whoever hands you're putting the show into for that, like usually it's like the MCs, right? Like the MCs, like make sure they're people that you're vetting properly, that you trust, that can put on something entertaining and like also just like be there to entertain the audience in case like something is going wrong and like can just like not have it like break out into awkward silence. So just like making sure that the people who are handling sort of that entertaining aspect of the show are people that you fully trust and you don't have to like micromanage like day of to like get to do something to like entertain the show or entertain the audience.
We're going to move on to the next question from Ganesh. How do you handle feedback, whether that's positive, constructive, negative, that comes in from teams or audience members post comp? And how do you determine whether this is actionable feedback or just taken in one ear and out the other?
Yeah, so I guess we're required to send out a post-comp feedback form to all teams. Um, so you'll get 8 or so responses that give you analysis of every single thing that could have happened. I also sent out an anonymous feedback form, which tends to be a useful way to get people's true thoughts on things. And okay, so one thing is that a lot of people say things and then a lot of people will say the opposite. So I made custom Boston Bandish socks. They're really cool and they're not that expensive. And so some of the teams were loving the socks and others were like, I didn't really like the socks. Do something else next year. And there's like often feedback where it's conflicted. And so I think that resolves in my head to just not everyone's going to be happy with every choice you make. So okay, so feedback that's constructive, you can evaluate it against what other people say and it's okay to like read it, acknowledge it, and just move on. Um, Positive feedback, you definitely should keep doing those things. Um, Often things are not actionable if you just simply cannot afford it or change like the way the thing works. Or like after party venue, a lot of people thought it was a bit strange, but that's the place we have and that's the most convenient location. So it is what it is. But at least you thought about it and you considered their perspective.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I mean, I feel like it's really important to take feedback seriously, and sometimes the feedback you get will not be doable, and that's okay. I think it's really important to still take that feedback and kind of just think about it, like sit on it. I think that a lot of times these teams, for our competition, since it was one of the later competitions, they just like they see all these competitions and they have a lot of good feedback that they want to give you. For example, for our competition, for our mixer dinner, it was really cold and teams made sure that we knew that. And that's something that we won't do again, for next year. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's the really small things that teams and people notice that sometimes we just overlook, honestly. But it's like those small things we try to remember for next time to either repeat it or not do again. I'm actually gonna go out of order for some of these questions. So I'm gonna go to Hansika's question. So beyond team dues and ticket sales, what were some fundraising methods or local sponsorship ideas that were most successful for you guys?
So, in terms of local sponsorship, the first place you should be looking is your campus. Any diversity, or I don't know if that's still allowed, like arts performing grants. So I had applied for I applied and got a $5,000 grant from the Council of Arts at MIT, and that basically bankrolled me the whole way. Um, Depending on how big your school is, they may or may not have that. Um, your local community will also have businesses who are willing to sponsor, and you should figure out the tax implications for them so you can make a nice pitch if it's like tax advantage for them. Also, I don't know if I guess ASA will tell you this too, but like a lot of schools with lots of sports teams, even like Division 3 sports, they'll have a lot of events where they hire people from the outside at like a pretty solid rate, and they'd rather pay student groups the exact same amount of money for the exact same amount of work. So I think like MIT had offered us like 25. We didn't do this, but we may next year, like 25 an hour, or like something crazy to just do concessions or like tickets at like a random basketball game. And like that's easy money if you and your friends can go just watch a basketball game and do some tasks. So um, I think if you're willing to put in the work, you can make money for your board, and it's like a fun bond. Like if you can make money through service with your friends, it's kind of also bonding, which is really nice.
I think that other than reg fees, I think the best way to earn or get money for your competition, is definitely to put on your like best face and do school fundraisers. For our comp board, we were running out of money last minute, so we did 2 or 3 last minute fundraisers. With the low budget, we did something called a dare board. I don't know if everybody's familiar with what that is, but basically, people pay us to do like random things like get pied in the face or do ice bucket challenge, stuff like that. So people come to support we had our liaisons do this. So people came to support the liaisons in their tasks, and paid for them to get pied in the face or whatever, or eat like a spoonful of hot sauce and stuff like that. We also did a bake sale, or a henna sale, where we sold henna designs. So we did henna for people. And then we also did tiramisu. So we sold tiramisu that somebody graciously made in their home. I think for Richmond, especially, we have a lot of struggles with getting outside money. Just because grants are all for organizations with nonprofit status, and they have to be like federal nonprofit organizations in order to get these grants. Nonprofit status does cost money, so we were not able to get that last year. We are striving towards that this year, hopefully. But that does help a lot in being able to apply for grants. And I think that in general, it can be hard to get sponsorships, but I think that over time, the more that you try to come back and talk to people, no matter how little they're trying to give you, over time that relationship will build. And even if they're only able to, for example, for us, we were able to get a tray for 50 people to feed just our board for free from a restaurant. And we took that opportunity because we know next year, um, when we come back to talking about sponsorships and everything like that for competition, we can reach out to this restaurant. We can ask them, "Hey, would you guys be willing to do a discounted deal for our team's lunch or our team's dinner?" So taking small opportunities and being able to kind of stretch them, is kind of comes with a lot of communication with these restaurants and with these local organizations. Um, Along with sponsorships, we also have something similar, like almost talking about with being paid as a student organization by different organizations. We have something called RMC events, where you are able to sign up for these fundraising shifts, and they will pay you to show up and do like a 7 hour work shift, basically, where you are selling tickets or doing parking or something like that. We also have King's Dominion. It's a Six Flags franchise where we are able to go and work fundraise there, and we just basically work a literal job like for a day, and they give us like, depending on how many people go, we get like $100 per person, and then we'll get bonuses based on if we bring 10 or more people, stuff like that. So definitely look around your area, your college area. A lot of organizations do these external fundraising um events where they will go to like a concert or something and volunteer their time for the organization money. So
These are super wonderful suggestions. So I hope this is really helpful for upcoming boards when you guys are planning your fundraising events for the fall. I do want to do a time check and mention that it is 9 p.m. But we do have a couple questions left. So, panelists, if you're okay with addressing the couple questions, we can go on to like 9:05-ish. If you need to drop off, go for it. But if our panelists are good, then I think we just have a couple more questions left that we can quickly go through. Um, how do you select judges who could fairly evaluate the South Asian Western elements, and what should you know about conflict of interests and rubric interpretation? So, how do you go about the recruiting confirming process? Before I hop into this, I will say I think this is more of an ASA question than a comp board question, but let me see what you guys have to say first.
Yeah, I guess I'll maybe say the ASA thing, which is you'll get a judge database, which is a set of all candidate judges they've approved over the years, and vetted, and kind of they have, maybe you've seen the competition guidelines, and there's some breakdown of what people's backgrounds must be to qualify for certain roles on the judging panel. Um, how to go about the thing. So I wanted to do a mix of people from this database and then people from like the my alumni community of my a cappella group. So I kind of connected those. I had some people from my alumni network fill out the ASA form to get vetted. If there's people who are alums from your team, if you're on a team that has competed recently, they're good, valuable resources, and it also kind of brings them into your community. Um, I think if you're in a city with a reasonable sized music scene, there's hopefully a lot of musical professionals. And so Western musically trained people who are interested in kind of fusion might be an interesting resource. And I also think like folks who are South Asian in heritage and they're like a professional artist in a non-South Asian genre, they're also maybe interested in like exploring this genre. So um, in terms of rubric interpretation and conflicts of interest, that's all sort of dealt with on the ASA side because they administer the competitive side. For recruiting, you can just look at who you think would be like a interesting voice to like evaluate, and ASA will deal with the vetting and processing part of that.
Yeah, I think we had on like the money side, like we had a bit of like an abnormal sort of judging confirming process because somehow it just turned out that a lot of the judges that were on the database were alumni of teams that were like coming to our competition. I think just because we had a lot of like California teams, so there was that like conflict. But I think the main thing is just like don't be afraid to like reach out to judges. Like most of these judges, especially on the database, like want to do this. Like that's why they're there. So just like reach out to all of them, especially like I would say if like budget is a concern, try staying like within your state as much as you can so that you don't have to like fly out people or like yeah, fly out people. And then I would also say one thing that I learned this year that might help other boards is like, I don't know how you guys like managed like flying out judges, like, or like figuring out their transportation, but we had a bit of an issue with one of the judges. So I would say like if you are like offering to fly out judges, like being upfront about how much you're willing to pay for their transportation. So just being like, hey, like we're willing to pay like this much for your transportation. So whatever flights or whatever you need to book within that price, like we can reimburse you for that. But otherwise, like sort of leave it up to them. Like all of these adults are like grown adults and like they can book their own flights and stuff. So I would just say be mindful of that and be straightforward and be upfront. But also they're all usually really friendly.
Yeah, I just want to add also, regarding conflict of interest, I think it's important to kind of also understand, like Sahana said, that sometimes you do end up having those teams that are 90% of the judging database, or you do have like a returning judge that you can't have return because one of the teams on your roster are part of that, or the judge is an alumni of that um team. So I think it's really important to just like listen to ASA guidelines and kind of figure it out like that.
Maybe
Yeah.
one
Oh,
of the
sorry, go ahead.
resources, like your school probably has a music faculty, and so one of the professors might be interested in trying out this new thing on a random Saturday in a place that happens to be where they already live, and then you don't have to deal. Like I would agree with Sahana that local judges are nice to have, and especially if you live in a, I mean, if you're in a college town, there should be a music professor or a musician somewhere. And if you're in a big city, there's definitely lots of musicians. So I would encourage not compensating for travel, because then you can put the money towards something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to reiterate what everyone has said. We update this database once a year, so it is as updated as it will get for the year. And basically, reaching out to those folks are the easiest people because they've already been pre-vetted. However, if you do know musicians or community members that are interested in judging, feel free to reach out to ASA and we can start the vetting process for you. I will also add start reaching out as early as you can once you know your lineup. That way, because a lot of these judges do get booked pretty fast. And that way you can also make contingency plans. So, for example, if you want about 5 judges, like reach out to as many as you can early on. Um, and bank for as many judges as you can get. That way, by the end, you'll have the like minimum requirement, which is 4 judges. But if you have any more questions about judging specifically, yes, feel free to reach out to ASA separately on Discord and we can answer your questions. And I do want to get to this last question. Aside from familiarity and sound, what are the factors you take into account when choosing a venue?
I'll go first because I guess mine's sort of easy. We have an on-campus auditorium which is free to rent for student groups, and it bookings started for 2027 February on 2026 February. So I just booked that as soon as I could, and the sound is pretty solid and it's free, and that means I can save like $5,000 to $10,000 for the rest of the competition. So if you have a free campus venue or a cheap campus venue and the sound is reasonable, I would say like that's a big win.
I would say if you are booking with like a local theater like in a city, which is what we did, theater staff, I would say is like one of the most important factors you can take into account, like vetting their sound person, their lighting person, which is I think ASA anyways vets like the sound engineer, but like not only just like vetting in general of like how good they are, but if you have like options, like if you're choosing between menus, I would say like one like important factor just to consider is like the staff and like whether they seem like a staff that like you're willing or not willing, whether they seem like a staff that you're able to like coordinate with easily, like they're on top of communication, they're understanding, like they're just like nice and like friendly. I would say like that's the most important part because not only are you going to be working with the staff very closely, like teams will also be going up to the staff and like asking them things, so you want to make sure that they're a group of people that you want to work with.
To kind of go off of what Sahana said, I think it's super important to get along with your venue staff. We have to go outside of VCU for our venue as well. And I think it's for our venue specifically, we have great venue staff. They're very, very communicative. They're always on top of things. They're always asking us questions about like anything to do with sound engineer or lighting techs or what we're gonna do regarding lighting. And they're also straightforward with us. Our lighting guy last minute, he was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think I can properly kind of execute what the cues are. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, especially because it's Indian music, and is what he said. And so we did have to make adjustments last minute regarding that, but it's better for them to be upfront about things like that rather than for us to last minute, literally day before comp or something, figure out what to do regarding lighting and who can take over for lighting. Thankfully, he did let us know at least like a week in advance, so we were able to fix that. But it's things like that that you should definitely look out for. You never want your comp venue to be hiding things from you, or kind of disregarding what your needs are as a competition. You're paying money for a venue, or even if you're not, you should still be respected to the idea that you are renting this space and um you are using this space for your competition, and that's a very important part.
Great points. Any final thoughts or questions before we conclude this panel? Amazing. Thank you all so much for coming out. And thank you so much to our panelists for showing your knowledge, sharing your knowledge with the rest of the circuit. I'm sure everyone really, really appreciates it. And I certainly learned a lot from today, and I'm sure everyone who attended also did as well. So thank you. And we do have two more team workshops coming next Tuesday and Thursday, both at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So hope to see you all then.
Yeah,
But
also just
see
want to
you
add real
all.
quick, we are releasing comp guidelines in the coming weeks, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, if you have any questions at all, ask us on Discord. We will respond as fast as we can. But yeah, sorry.
I also just wanted to add, like, it would be super nice. Like, I know there's like the comp leaders channel, and like if anyone like has any questions or just like wants to share any insights to like other comp boards throughout the year, like we should definitely like start that maybe this year and like utilize that channel.
Yeah,
I fully agree. Continue. Sorry.
I agree as well. I think that it's really important, like as comp board, we kind of like communicate with each other, like different comp boards, and kind of figure out what each other are doing. Because I mean, I remember last year, Ohm asked a question, and I never really thought about using the Discord like that. So I think that it would be good if we all kind of also reach out to each other and like touch base too.
Yeah, I think that info sharing is a very valuable thing. Even normalizing on things like cost uh, or expectations from people you're hiring is a good thing. Tips like the panel is nice to have. Hopefully, all future comp directors will see this and be able to get this. But also, it's nice to be able to just one off like day before your comp. If you have a last minute question, you can post it not just in your specific channel, but hit all the comp directors, and someone who's done this before will be able to help you. And I think it's if any of you in the audience, hopefully y'all are running comps next year, like it would be nice to hear from you all, like what's going well, what's not going well. And also like I learned a lot from Nitya and Sahana today as well. Kind of everyone's learning how to do this for the first time, and then you just like sort of do it your own way. So it's nice to hear from other people. So I'm sure I have a lot to learn from new directors who also figure things out. So yes, echoing, let's continue to make community out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Please use that Discord. Please communicate amongst yourselves. The more community, the more networking, the better. And all of this is super helpful for other competitions as well who are also up and coming. But don't want to take anyone's time. Thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you all next week.